Isn't wrestling just so much fun? I know. Simon, why did you start doing Impact Ups and Downs all those weeks ago? Well, I don't want to be that guy, but somebody may have tipped me off. That's not true at all. Imagine anybody from the wrestling world went, oh, we've got to tell the bald guy on YouTube. We'll just have to call it a matter of luck. But I think this interpromotional stuff is just absolutely faboo. And for everyone out there going, well, why are they doing it with Impact? Impact's really small. Why do you care? Why do you care about how big or little something is? That sounds like a euphemism. I did not mean it to. Just enjoy it. Never forget, when you watch your entertaining program, you're just meant to have fun. And I know I'm having a rollicking good time. I'm having some fun. Let's take the finger of power and up those downs for AEW Impact. What an idiot. And do you know how Impact started this week? With a recap of Kenny Omega winning the AEW Championship. Just imagine 7 days ago I had said to you, oh, by the way, on the next episode of Impact Ups and Downs, we're going to be talking about that. You would have found where I lived, knocked on my door, and punched me in the face. And I would have gone, you know what? I absolutely deserved it. It was surreal in the best possible way, and once again, I'm just having so much fun with this. I really am. I was giddy like a school child. Someone needs to slap me as getting it up. Impact was smart too, because they knew that more people probably than ever were going to watch their show, and going by their Twitch numbers, they absolutely smashed it. So the very first match was Chris Saban versus Josh Alexander. That just works and makes you go, hey, we've got a really good roster, which they do. It tied in well enough too, in the sense that you have the North, who want to become the tag team champions. You have the Motor City Machine Gun, who wants to be the tag team champions. So why not have two of their competitors square off to see who's the better wrestler? And it was pure, this guy's a fast guy and this guy's a strong guy. And really the North would have done a lot better if it wasn't for Ethan Page. He going a bit doolally over the last few weeks, and he was yelling at his partner to properly wreck Chris Saban. And if he had ignored that and stuck to the game plan, this probably would have been okay. But he didn't. So Chris Saban won. Unfortunately though, he did win with the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up. And I cannot tell a lie, I have to be as transparent as possible. That may have happened, and I may have gone, oh man, not a flipping surprise roll-up. We just did not need it. And I'm going to assume this was filmed before all the Omega stuff, but it just felt like that wrestling trope popped back into my life and smacked me right in the skull. So I have a brand new slogan, and it's called Get Rid of Roll-Ups in Wrestling. See, it rolls off the tongue very nicely. A lot of rolls going on there. But yeah, we needed a clean finish. We're getting it down. Still, this was a lot of fun, and I suppose could end up with the North taking on the Motor City Machine Guns, taking on the Good Brothers for the titles, and that is not bad. I wanted to say this is good, but I can't because of the Good Brothers name. Damn it. Chris Bey was then trying to talk to Moose backstage, because later on they are going to have a tag team match with these two guys, taking on the Impact World Champion Rich Swann and Willie Mack. Now, I don't understand how Chris Bey has able to worm himself into having a world title match, given that he lost last week against Willie Mack. What do I know? And I guess that Moose didn't get it either, because he refused to talk to Bey here. And even when Chris was baiting him, like, man, you better start having a conversation with me, because I'm going to be the champion soon, and then you'll want a shot, Moose just looked at him and like, yeah, well, if you do that, I'll just come and take it from you. We have timed this Moose rehab perfectly. He feels like one of the biggest and best dudes in the whole company, and if he does become the champion, well, it will make all this interpromotional stuff even better still. And then, man, what followed rocked. I don't want to call this NWO-esque, but we did have a pre-paid-for advert featuring Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone saying, hey, you should come watch AEW Dynamite. So we did kind of feel NWO-esque. Because I just thought this was such a good idea. What a great way to try and get a lick of revenge. And if you're out there going, well, who on earth would have accepted the advert? Well, later on in this show, Scott D'Amore, who basically controls Impact, seemed very excited about this relationship. And of course, Don Callis, who also basically runs Impact, this is his whole master plan. Of course you'd take his money. It also allowed Tony to tell Kenny and Don that they should turn up on AEW Dynamite tomorrow, and then he even hinted, you know what, I have a lot of money, maybe I'll just buy your stupid company, and then what you gonna do? See, this is why it's fun and exciting and good. We are crossing the streams and everything's coming together, and it makes you go, oh, I wonder what's gonna happen next, and it encourages you to watch both shows because they're all gonna connect together. Now, I'm not gonna give this an up or a down yet. I'm gonna tie it into the Kenny Omega interview later. You shall see why. More showcase stuff happened next, even though I'm going to presume that it was more out of luck than planned. It was Brian Myers taking on TJP, and yeah, like a lot of this show, they just had a fine wrestling match. up. Once again, it was basically strength versus speed, and while TJP was able to get his licks in, Brian Myers had an answer for everything. So TJP was like, well, I know what my best move is. It's the Mamba Splash, so he kept going for it, but that kind of telegraphed all his maneuvers, and Myers came up with a plan. Basically, to avoid it, smash him with a lariat and get the 1, 2, 3. Now, this did kind of surprise me, because TJP ain't doing great recently, and I also thought it was going to tie into the X Division stuff, which it still looks like it may do. That's the only odd thing about Impact. Wins and losses don't seem to make much difference, but hey, this was alright. It also won't have done Brian Myers any harm, because if you are a WWE viewer but you were so intrigued you tuned into Impact, straight away they've gone, forget the old version of this character that you knew, he's not that guy, he is a proper wrestler, which is his gimmick, respect him. And you will. Cody Deaner was then keeping up this whole, oh, I've got to sort out Eric Young and Joe Doring and nobody can help me. I don't know where this has come from. It just sparked out of nowhere, and he's also coming across like a nuts person. He told Cousin Jake not to interfere with his match later, and that is just a terrible plan. He was all like, oh, you could hang out ringside, but don't do anything aggressive. This is not the way you try and take down two dudes who have basically been wrecking the show each and every single week. But we will see it later. Rohit Raju then laughed at TJP. I mean, poor TJP, he can't get a break. But he also told us that at Final Resolution, he is finally going to retire the Defeat Rohit challenge. And the only rule this time is that TJP can't challenge. Now, if you've been watching the show, you know what's going to happen. Suicide's going to come out, and it's going to be TJP, and he's finally going to win the X Division title. And while that is a nice plan, it still doesn't explain why TJP, around about 22 seconds ago, lost. I do think it's probably best that we do end the challenge because it's been a little hit and miss, but I do really like Rohit Raju. He has grown into his role throughout 2020 perfectly. Then surprise, surprise, Eric Young beat Cody Deaner. I mean, what did he think was going to happen? What an idiot. A courageous idiot, but an idiot all the same. But yeah, he had a few flurries, but ultimately he was too distracted by Joe Doring and Cousin Jake. Well, I can't do anything. So this allowed Eric Young to smack him with the power driver and pin him to the 1, 2, 3. And nothing on this earth in my 30 or so years here has surprised me less. When it did end, I was like, where the hell are we going to go now? But thankfully, Impact did tell me. Because just as Joe and Eric were about to give both guys a double power driver, out came Rhino to make the save after he got beaten up a few weeks ago, and he had a bat for good measure. So, you know, if you're going to do Rhino versus Joe Doring or something like that, they're two big pieces of meat, they'll slap each other around, and as we know, all wrestling fans enjoy that. Especially Big E. So we do have some direction now. I still don't know why Eric and Joe are a team, and I would like that explained soon, but up. Then everything with Johnny Bravo. Now maybe Impact had to shelve it or move it to one side because they had bigger fish to fry, namely AEW, but it has become very disappointing. Down. Short version is that Larry D, a would-be murderer, came to a deal with Tommy Dreamer that they will have a fight at Final Resolution, and if Larry D wins, he's off the hook, but if he loses, he's got to go to jail. At no point in real life would that happen. Like the cops just watching at home going, well, we were going to bust in there and arrest this fool, but thankfully, we ain't going to do squat. It just feels rushed and like we didn't have a plan, and surely whatever that plan should have been would have resulted in Larry D, the culprit, gaining something from this, but instead, it's just there. I don't know, I don't get it. Dreamer then bumped into Scott D'Amore, who very understandably went, man, I'm just sick of wrestlers making matches. I was like, Scotty, you are right, but you're also in charge. Just stop this from happening. And then they teased more of this AEW versus Impact stuff. Because Scott was like, I think this is great, this is going to help ratings. Whereas Tommy Dreamer, who has worked with Don Callis back in ECW, if you know, you know, if you don't know, don't worry about it, was terrified about all of this. I tell you, the subtlety and the depth here is kind of crazy. Like, you do have to know a lot, but you don't have to know it, if that makes any sense. It just makes me feel very excited in my tum-tum. You also have divided allegiances. These two were friends, but now they can't agree. The whole thing is about to explode. I was then caught off guard because it was the next round of the women's tag team tournament match, and we had Deonna Purrazzo, the women's champion, and Kimberly taking on Rosemary and Taya, and Rosemary and Taya won. But it actually made sense. Because here's the thing, you want to make sure that your women's champion does enter tournaments like this because instantly it makes it feel more legit. But unlike other certain wrestling companies, I don't want the women's title and the tag team title to get all convoluted and congangled. That's no fun. I want them both to stand on their own. And it was well thought out too, because Deonna accidentally kicked Kimberly and that wasn't the plan. She then got speared by Rosemary, went out of the ring, allowing Rosemary to pin Kimber, and that was it. 1, 2, 3. They're going through to the next round, and our champion and her friend well, they ain't having a good time at all. So it was just solid stuff. It was solid stuff, and I enjoyed it. Alicia Edwards and Tanil Dashwood then fell out, and this was a stark difference to a few weeks ago when Alicia was like, Tanil, please be my friend, be my tag team partner. Because here Dash was like, hey man, I've come up with a bunch of cool designs we can have for our gear, but obviously Alicia Edwards is not interested anymore because she cares more about her husband. As it turns out, you shouldn't say that kind of stuff to Tanil. She was not happy, pup. It meant the badness is here, and Tanil told Alicia that now she was going to teach her a lesson. And I really hope she means it seriously. Next week there'll be a skit on Impact where she does have a lesson with her and she teaches her English. And you may be going, Simon, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But Impact comes up with some wacky stuff. If any company was going to do it, it would be them. Bradso and Lee were then complaining to Scott D'Amore, saying we should never have been in our tournament match this evening. We're all terrified and freaked out by Su Yung, who has been chasing our asses for the last few weeks. It's a bit like, that's a good point. I mean, she is an undead zombie. It would certainly give you sleepless nights. D'Amore didn't care about any of this and just said, I tell you what we'll do. If you want to sort it out, at Final Resolution, it will be you, the champion, taking on Su Yung. And this is quite interesting because you don't want Su Yung to lose because she may lose her aura, but you also don't want Deonna to lose because you don't want to play hot potato with that title. But here we go. We have an intriguing scenario. I don't know what that was. Impact then took some of its storylines and synced them all together. Bye, oodalally up. Sami Callihan, my mortal enemy, was in the ring cutting a promo, and he said that he's the ratings draw, people tune in because of him, and given that a few years ago, he did smack Eddie Edwards in the face with a bat, and that increased viewership even more, he was like, hey ho, why not do it again? I won't lie, because I'm a bad person, kind of made me laugh. Alicia Edwards then interrupted for obvious reasons, but before she could do anything, Sami was like, if you want to get in this ring, I will break your neck. And I was like, flipping hell, the situation has just escalated. Turned out this was just a setup for the return of Eddie Edwards, who chased Sami Callihan away with a bat. And given that we had this little backstage skit afterwards, it certainly does seem like Impact is setting up Sami Callihan and Tanil Dashwood to take on Alicia Edwards and Eddie Edwards. And I didn't see that coming. Maybe a bit different, but I'm certainly not against it. And yeah, I know the Callihan-Edwards feud may never end, but let's face it, Sami did bust his skull open with a bat. I don't think you're going to get over it that easily. Right, our main event, it was Moose and Chris Bey taking on Swann and Willie Mack, and I just can't understand how we're doing Swann versus Chris Bey at Final Resolution. Why isn't Willie Mack putting his hand up and going, excuse me, I beat that guy last week, where is my opportunity? He's right. And the justification is that Swann is so pissed off with Chris Bey, he wants to beat his ass, but as long as this does end up with Willie Mack getting something, and of course Moose, then maybe all of this is tied together quite nicely. Either way, in terms of the match, up. It built to the hot tag for Swann, of course, and when he was in there, he just flew around like a bird. That man knows what he's doing, but really this was more about Chris Bey and Willie Mack, I guess to try and get Chris Bey his win back. Because as soon as Moose was worried that things were going awry, he just absolutely destroyed Willie, which allowed Chris Bey to just crawl over and get the 1, 2, 3. Now I did kind of like that because we were meant to despise Chris, he's a bad guy, and this was a crappy thing to do. So I do need to see what's going to happen at the pay-per-view, but I guess you do have multiple ways you can take all of this, and I like it when storylines get all squiggly and kind of fit together. So yeah, it was fine. The best part, in some ways, was what followed, because Swann decided to leave the arena, because, you know, he'd done his work for the night and he wanted to go home, but he wasn't allowed because the champion had taken over the parking lot, but in this sense, the champion was none other than the AEW champ, Kenny Omega. It meant Swann on his own show was stuck in the building, and we did have this little bit where Josh Matthews was allowed to go through, because he was on the list. I would not have done that because it made Swann look like such a goof. But really, when it comes to invasion storylines, you do have to make some important people look like goofs, and then they need to get their revenge. As long as Swann gets that, this is all fine. Impact then finished with this big interview between Kenny Omega and Don Callis. If we take this and we tie it into that AEW advert they had earlier, look, I was having the time of my life. It's just so good. I love interpromotional warfare, so it's not just getting it up. Is getting a golden up. The pair were assholes straight away because they did the ceremonial name changing on the title. They took off Jon Moxley's plate, threw it away, and put Kenny Omega's on there as well. And then they proceeded to tie everything together so well, I think I may have had a meltdown. Because after Josh Matthews did say, look, what the hell is going on here? Don Callis told us, it didn't happen last week, it didn't happen last year, it didn't happen 2 years ago. This happened 27 years ago when I stumbled across a man known as Kenny Omega, who just so happened to be the nephew or some kind of relation to the Golden Sheik, who is the person who trained me when it came to professional wrestling. Ever since then, he knew that Kenny was going to be the future, so why do you think he got back involved with the business a few years ago? It wasn't to be a podcast host, it wasn't just to be a color commentator, commentator on New Japan Pro Wrestling. It was to change the industry from its very core, and that's what these two are going to do right now. Callis even mentioned how it was his idea to do the whole Chris Jericho versus Kenny Omega match for New Japan at Wrestle Kingdom, which kind of kickstarted AEW, and they even had a picture of the Golden Sheik, and it was the same picture that was next to Kenny Omega when he did that interview from that house before he fought Jon Moxley. This is some crazy shebang. They went on to say it's more about winning matches or making memories, it's about making history, and Kenny Omega even referenced this whole gentleman's agreement from his match with Moxley 7 days ago, and he was like, I didn't break it. I didn't break it at all. I see Don Callis as a father figure, and he got attacked by Jon Moxley, and therefore I realised, well, if he's not going to play the game, neither am I. I mean, do you just want to sim through this? It is like being Scrooge McDuck. Omega then followed it up by saying his new goal now is to become a collector. When he was a kid, he wanted to collect comics, but now he wants to collect belts. And I just want to say this. Please, wrestling world, make this happen. He's already the AEW World Champion. Make him the Impact Champion. Make him the Impact Women's Champion. Have him win the Impact Knockout Division. Make him the TNT Champion. Then somehow get New Japan involved and make him the IWGP Champion. I want to look at Kenny Omega and throw up because he's so disgustingly gold. Kenny finished all of this by saying he's got an even bigger surprise tomorrow on Dynamite, so there's a reason to tune in if you weren't going to do so anyway. And he also referenced Lex Luger. Now, this was mostly because they were on a bus, and if you were alive back then, you remember. But all of this is just great. It's just so much fun. I know I keep saying that word, but I think it's important. I don't care how many people watch Impact. I hope it's loads. I hope one day they get 34 million viewers. But right now, as a man just sat on his couch, give me more of this and plug me in. So you won't be surprised to hear that this week's episode of Impact gets an up, and even though I get excited about Dynamite most weeks anyway, now I'm doubly excited. Regret saying it like that. Doubly excited, Give me more of this though. I am ready. Now don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's Impact. My word, it's going to be fire down there. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. We got a website. It's called WhatCulture.com. Check it out. We're on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. Check it out. And you're already here on YouTube. Take your own finger of power. See what I did there? Click away. Watch some more videos. My name is Simon from WhatCulture. Thank you for joining me as always. And if you were worried the Impact ups and downs are going to go away, I'm going to guess maybe not for a while. See ya.